This video is the next video in the simultaneous equation set of videos. In particular, this is looking at solving simultaneous equations graphically. Now, in the first video, what we did is we were able to check whether solutions that we were given were actually solutions to the equation. So we did that by, say, for example, if they told us that the solution for the simultaneous equation was x equal to 1 and y equal to -2, we soaked those values in and we figured out if the left-hand side was equal to the right-hand side. And if the left-hand side was equal to the right-hand side, well then that was the solution to the simultaneous equations. Now, it's great when they give us the solution to the simultaneous equations, but what they will most likely want us to do is they will want us to figure out what those values for x and what that value for y is that solves the simultaneous equation. And one way to do that is by graphing the simultaneous equations. Now, you know how to graph simultaneous equations, as we've already done coordinate geometry of the line, so in this video it's going to be an awful lot of repetition, which should be easy and which you should find not too hard. Recapping what we did when we were studying coordinate geometry of the line, in order to plot a line, you need to find 2 points on the line. Then you plot the 2 points on the coordinate diagram and join the points with a ruler. The easiest way to do this is to find where the line cuts the x-axis and the y-axis. So there's two things you need to do when you're going to graph a line. You need to find where the line cuts the x-axis and find where the line cuts the y-axis. To find where the point cuts the x-axis, take the equation of the line and replace y with 0. Then you're going to solve that equation, figure out what the value for x is, and this value of x is called the x-coordinate of the point, and it's also called the x-intercept. To find where a point cuts the y-axis, you take the equation of the line and you replace x with 0. Then you solve the equation to figure out what the value for y is. This value for y is the y-coordinate of the point, and it's called the y-intercept. What we're going to do now is we're going to recap how to draw a few lines by doing a few examples. Example 1 here says, on the same pair of axes, sketch the lines x plus y minus 2 equals to 0 and 2x minus 3y plus 16 equals to 0. I'm going to take the first line, which we have is x plus y minus 2 is equal to 0. Now we need to graph this line, so we're going to figure out where this line crosses the x-axis. And when it crosses the x-axis, we know that y is equal to 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace y with 0. So this becomes x plus 0 minus 2 is equal to 0. So all I've done here is I've replaced y with 0. What happens then is we have x, and then 0 minus 2 is minus 2 is equal to 0, and we need to get the x on its own. So I'm going to plus 2 to both sides, and what we'll be left with is we'll be left with x equal to 2. So the point we have then is we have the point 2, 0. Then we need to find out where the graph crosses the y-axis. And the line crosses the y-axis when x is equal to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the equation that I had and I'm going to replace x with 0. So we have 0 plus y minus 2 is equal to 0. Then we add the like terms, so 0 minus 2 is going to be minus 2, so we'll be left with y minus 2 is equal to 0. We need to find the y on its own, so I'm going to plus 2 to both sides. What I'll be left with then is I'll be left with y is equal to 2. This then gives us the point of that line, which is 0, 2. Finally then, we need to draw this line, so we plot the points on the graph. So we have the point 2, 0, which is approximately here, and we have the point 0, 2, which is approximately here, and finally we just need to join these together, and I'm going to join them together in black, and we need to continue on after this line as well. I'm going to label this then what line we have. So this is x minus y minus 2 is equal to 0. We've now plotted the line x plus y minus 2 equal to 0. Now we're going to plot the line 2x minus 3y plus 16 is equal to 0. So again, we need to figure out where it crosses the x-axis. When it crosses the x-axis, y is equal to 0. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to replace y with 0. So this becomes 2x 3y when y is 0 plus 16 is equal to 0. So again, all I've done here is I figured out where y is 0 by replacing y with 0. Then what I'm going to be left with here is 2x minus 3 times 0, which is 0, plus 16 is equal to 0. What I have then is I have that 2x plus 16 is equal to 0. I need to get the x by itself, so I'm going to minus 16 from both sides, and I'll be left with 2x is equal to minus 16. Again, I need to get the x by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and I'll be left with that x is equal to minus 8. So the point we have then is minus 8, 0. Then I need to figure out where the graph is going to cross the y-axis. The graph is going to cross the y-axis when x is equal to 0. So again, I'm going to take the x and replace it with 0. So 2 times 0 is just 0. So we're left with minus 3y plus 16 is equal to 0. We can minus 16 from both sides. We'll be left with minus 3y is equal to minus 16. We can then divide both sides by minus 3. And we'll be left with y equal to 5 1/3. So that point then we have is 0, 5 1/3. Then we can graph this line. So we have the point minus 8, 0, which is here. And we have the point 5 1/3, which is approximately here. Then we can join these 2 points together, like this, and then we can label this line. So this line here is the line 2x minus 3y plus 16 is equal to 0. From the last part of the question, or what the last part of the question asks us, is from your graph, write down the point of intersection of these two lines. So the point of intersection is where both lines meet, and both lines meet exactly here, and that point is minus 2, 4. Example 2 is very similar to example number 1, so I'm hoping after I do this example it will clear up anything that might not make sense. So it says m is the line 3x plus y minus 6 is equal to 0, and n is the line x minus 2y plus 5 is equal to 0. On the same axes and scales, plot the lines m and n. Then, from your graph, identify the point of intersection of m and n. So we have the line m, which is 3x plus y minus 6 is equal to 0. When we're graphing a line, we need to figure out where it crosses the x-axis and when it crosses the y-axis. So when it crosses the x-axis, y is 0. So in this case, we're just going to replace y with 0. So we'll be left with 3x plus 0 minus 6 is equal to 0, which will leave us with 3x minus 6 is equal to 0. We can then plus 6 to both sides. We'll be left with 3x is 6. We need to get x by itself, so we can divide both sides by 2, and we'll be left with x is equal to 3. So the point where this line intersects the x-axis is 3, 0. We then need to figure out where it's going to cross the y-axis, and it crosses the y-axis when x is equal to 0. So all we do is we replace x with 0 in the equation, which is 3 times 0 plus y minus 6 is equal to 0. Then what we can do is work that out. So 3 times 0 is 0 plus y minus 6 is equal to 0. Again, we need the y by itself, so we can plus 6 to both sides, and we'll be left with y is equal to 6. Then the point where this line crosses the y-axis is 0, 6. We also have the equation of the line x minus 2y plus 5 is equal to 0. We need to graph that line, so we graph that line by figuring out where it crosses the x-axis. When it crosses the x-axis, y is equal to 0, so we're going to replace y with 0. So we get x minus 2 times 0 plus 5 is equal to 0. This then becomes x minus 2 times 0 is 0, so just plus 5 is equal to 0. We need to get the x by itself, so we can minus 5 from both sides. That will leave us with x equal to minus 5. So the point where this line crosses the x-axis is minus 5, 0. And the point then we need to figure out is where it crosses the y-axis. And it's going to cross the y-axis when x is equal to 0. So here we're just replacing x with 0. So we'll be left with minus 2y plus 5 is equal to 0. We need to get y by itself, so I'm going to minus 5 from both sides. So what we'll be left with is minus 2y is equal to minus 5. I can then divide both sides by minus 2. And what I'll be left with is y is equal to 5 over 2, which is the same as 2 and a half. So the point where this line crosses the y-axis is 0, 2 and a half. The next thing we need to do is plot these graphs. So what we're going to do is we're going to plot the graph 3x plus y minus 6 is equal to 0. So that has the point 3, 0, which is here, and the point 0, 6, which is here. And we can join those together. And then I'm going to label that 3x plus y minus 6 is equal to 0. Then I'm going to plot the line x minus 2y plus 5 is equal to 0. So we have the point minus 5, 0 and 0, 2 and a half. So that point will be here. Joining them together then we get this line here. And this is the line x minus 2y plus 5 is equal to 0. And finally, it says from your graph, identify the point of intersection of m and n. So the point of intersection is right here. And then we need to figure out what that is. So that's going to be the point 1.5, 3. The questions you're going to be completing then after watching this video are very, very similar to the ones I've done. Question 1 and 2, they're asking you to just identify the lines and figure out where the point of intersection is. So you don't even need to graph them, they've graphed the lines for you. So it's just the very last part of the examples I was doing where I was picking out the point where the lines overlap each other. Question 3 is the very same as question 1 and 2. And then question 4 to 7 is exactly the same as example 1 and 2 that I've done in this video. So that brings this video to an end. If there is any questions or you have any problems with it, please get in contact with me straight away and I'll help you with it. But I'm hoping that the questions you're going to do now after watching this video will make sense.